All right, Nick.
I need to put in my Zen real quick. Don't judge me. I have an addiction.
I think
Is
it's
Zen?
actually episode 14.
I fucking love Zen.
What is that?
14? Mm-hmm. That's insane.
What is Zen?
Zen is a nicotine pouch. It's good for you.
That's the thing you keep trying.
It raises your IQ by 10 points. I fucking need it, bro. I don't have much left up there.
Each one, if I had like 4, would I got 40 points?
I don't think it's linear like that.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need my nicotine. I'm a nicotine addict.
I just can't inhale anything. I can't inhale a vape. My lungs reject it.
Maybe that's what I need to go to.
I recommend Zen.
Yeah?
They mess you up though.
Yeah? How?
They're pretty strong.
They make me like genuinely. I nearly fall out. Like it makes you feel like you're gonna fall over.
Yeah, I'm used to it now.
You build a tolerance.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Okay. I might leave that one in, our nicotine conversation. Anyway, it's been a while. How you been?
Good, man. When was the last time I saw you? A year ago, right?
Was it conference last
This
year?
conference? Or maybe
I think it was after that.
No, we've been
after?
since, haven't
Yeah.
we?
you guys have a better place this time. Thank you for getting a better spot.
Fuck, that was a problem.
Yeah.
So we booked a spot.
Why does this always happen?
Well, actually, when you think about it, it's Miami. Miami is a scam.
Everyone here is super sketchy.
Yeah, everyone's
Every
sketchy.
broker.
Whatever we do, whether it's buying a coffee and a sandwich or renting an Airbnb, everyone is scamming you.
Yeah.
And so we booked this Airbnb. The photos look great. We got there. We're like, we can't stay here. And it was like $12,000 for 2 weeks, which is what our normal budget is. So we spoke to the guy and he said, well, I got a few other places. This was another $16,000. So it was $28,000 for 2 weeks. And we're like, fuck. But then when you think it through,
I have a second bedroom. You guys could use my place.
there's 5 people that were staying here. And if you think in cost of a hotel, we basically paid $400 a night per person.
That's actually
Yeah.
reasonable.
So if you try and go through hotels and then book a studio, it would cost more and a lot more traveling. So the cost of doing the job right. Where were we last time?
We got scammed that time as well. That's when we turned up to the place, and as we turned up, this like carload of people came and like, "Are you coming for the party tonight?" And they were having a party at the Airbnb that we were meant to be renting.
No, that was the second one because we went to the place beforehand and we were in the ghetto.
Oh yeah, that's
well,
right.
you were in the Gables, but like not the good part of the Gables.
No.
Well, the first place was actually in Little Haiti, and then we ended up in Coral Gables.
Hold on, but Nick didn't come to that place.
No,
did he?
right.
Did yeah?
Did he? But that was a nice place.
Yeah, no, the place we were at nice. He was just far away from Nick.
Yeah, thank you for doing the design district. It's closer.
All right.
But yeah, I've been reliably informed this is my 14th episode of this show. Is that right?
Out of how many?
662.
Who else is ahead? Lynn? But that
I don't
doesn't.
think anyone's ahead now.
Oh, really?
No, maybe Lynn is actually.
But Lynn was a regular.
Oh, yeah. That
Oh yeah, Lynn's
count.
on 26.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Doesn't
Yeah,
count.
but apart from that,
What percentage of the show am I? What's 14 over 600?
I'm not going
I
to try and
mean,
do
what's
maths.
that?
You have a
140,
laptop.
560. So about, 140.
I'm not even going to attempt that kind of math right now.
2.5, 5, 6, 7, about 1.8%, 1.9,
2.1.
2.1. Not far off.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've got this. So I always do sums in my head.
Really?
When I hear a sum, I try and do it in my head. I work out these little patterns to do it. So that one was like 14, and I know we've done 660. So I'm like, okay, 40 and 140. Okay, 140, 280, 560. Okay, so that's 2.5% ish. If we did 580 shows, all right, what's my quick guesstimate for the difference? I'm always trying to do sums in my head.
I can't anymore.
Yeah.
No, I have too much brain damage from arguing on the internet. So,
All right, man. Anyway, you been good?
yeah, man. Yeah. I didn't go to the conference, but I was physically in Miami. So,
It was a good conference. I preferred it from last year. I said to you before we started. It was smaller,
yeah.
which was better. And look, if I could get 25,000 people to a conference, I would get 25,000 people to a conference. But they still got 12,000-ish there. I thought the quality of speakers was higher than last year. I thought all the kind of side events were a little bit cooler, a little bit more dive bar-y, not so flashy.
I threw a pickleball event.
What the fuck was my invite?
I didn't know you were a player. Do you play?
No, I don't.
Well, then.
I don't even know what pickleball is.
It's like tennis for less athletic people.
That's that fastest growing sport thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jump on board.
Who won?
We didn't do a tournament. We just played.
Participation trophies.
Yeah, exactly. like that one right there.
That's not a fucking participation trophy, dude. We won the double.
That one's real. Oh, there was a cup as well?
Yeah, we won the league and the cup.
Did you guys compete in the FA Cup? Can you get into it from down there?
So we've applied now for the division we're in. We can get into it. So we've applied. You have to be accepted, but we think we'll be in it this year.
Because non-league teams can.
Yeah.
You could, in theory, win the FA Cup.
We can, in theory, win the FA Cup next season. It's a non-zero chance.
Yeah.
There's a lot of zeros after the decimal for that non-zero chance. So what you always want to do is, if you're a non-league team, your goal is to get to the first round. Because what happens is the non-league teams all play each other first.
Yeah.
For like 5-6 rounds. And then, there's lots of tiered. So say step one's the first non-league division, and then you get step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, 5, 4, 3, I think, play a couple of rounds, and then they bring in 2 and 1.
Yeah.
And if you get to the first round proper, then it's the teams from the League 1 and 2 and Championship.
And maybe Conference.
Championship? I think it's Championship as well.
Well,
and then the third round, they bring in the Premier League. So the big goal for any long league team is, can we get to the third round? Because you might get Man United.
And you get TV money, right?
You get TV money.
You might play at Old Trafford, then you split the gate?
You get half the gate. Doesn't matter how many you bring. And so a lot of the teams, when they do it, they always will take Old Trafford and split. And also it's a chance for the players to one-off game at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
But sometimes teams are like, nah, screw this. Come to our place. So you'll see this like tiny little place that holds 3,000 people, and Man United are turning up.
Right.
But just to be in the FA Cup itself is brilliant.
That's sick.
Yeah, we have an FA Cup game, and I would expect the team we're going to put together, I'd expect us to possibly win our first couple of rounds. Our goal is to try and get a team in step 2 or step 3.
So what's it gonna cost you, do you think, to get into League 2? Like to get into the football
Good
league?
question. So,
because it's been done before. Like people have incubated non-league teams and got them all the way up.
Salford did it. The Reborn Wimbledon did it. Dorking had one below it, I think. So if I had to estimate, if you said, give me a number now, I'll sort you out. I think it'd be about 10 million. But it could be less. So, for example, this year, over the summer, we've got to spend about 230,000 on our ground. We've got to put in two new stands, new perimeter fence. And we've got to do all these things because every league level is graded. And so, if you don't hit the grading, they won't allow you to go up. The following year, we need a new clubhouse because our dressing rooms aren't big enough. That's going to be another 250. Then we might be all right for a year.
But as you keep moving up, the infrastructure costs go up.
The infrastructure costs go up, and then you won't be able to play league football on our ground. We will. So we're spending all this money while at the same time looking for another site and looking to build on that. But
because your drainage isn't up to spec or something?
You just can't. You can't have a 3,000-4,000 ground there. And if we're a team that get into the football league, into League 2, we're going to be ones that think we can get to 1 and perhaps Championship. Genuinely think that. And so you need somewhere that could be a 10,000 capacity at some point. And so what you really need is a site that you can build upon. But yeah, I think Wrexham's wage bill this year was probably around 2.5 million.
Wrexham was the one where some American actors bought it, right? As a reality show around that.
Yeah, they're like the cool version of us.
Are they cringe? Are they considered cringe or cool?
It's a mixture. So I've got mixed feelings. Firstly, I think it's great for Wrexham, the town of Wrexham, and the team just they've been really treated badly by previous owners. And it's part of Wales, it's a bit deprived, and for them to have all this excitement, it's amazing. When you watch the TV series, I think Rob McElhenney is okay. But
he's from It's Always Sunny, right?
Yeah, he's all right.
I like him.
But Ryan Reynolds is like, he's trying to be Deadpool. Like they're having a serious conversation, and it's not funny.
He's
Plus,
doing the Deadpool character.
Yeah, they do they go to like 3 or 4 games, the big ones. Whereas Connor helps. What's it like? We're pulling the pints and working the gate. We're literally all volunteering to make it work. So it's a similar story, but completely different. But it's great for them. It's great for Wrexham. Ultimately, I'm happy for them. But we're trying to do it without their funds. But maybe next ball run, I'll find a Bitcoin billionaire and say, come on.
Have you worked out how many podcast episodes you need to record to get into League 2?
That is a good question. How long have we been doing this? 6 years? 150 a year. If we did it in 10 years, that'd be 1,500 podcast episodes.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of podcast episodes. But
you're going to have to expand. It can't be Bitcoin anymore.
Well, I think the thing that's on our side is we've not raised any money yet. And we don't want to do that for the first 3 years. I think we can do the first 3 promotions without raising money. And then I think if I go out to the Bitcoin community and say, well, look, I've got us this far. Now we need to raise money. We need 10, 20 million, whatever that number is. This can be our team. We can all get involved. I think a lot of people will be interested. But
I'm committing a check to that raise.
All right.
I'm in.
We've had a few people like that. Some big lumps as well.
Mine's a small lump.
But it's probably still a big lump.
Depends on the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah, it depends on the price of Bitcoin. So if there was a Bitcoin run, that's the time to raise money.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing this to make money. I just want the team to be successful. So the equity doesn't really matter to me. I'd probably want to do what Zuckerberg did and make sure I have control over decisions. Dictator for life. But at the same time, I mean, I'm not here thinking, oh, I'm going to sell this club one day and make some money. If Bitcoin continues to grow, I will be financially fine, and our team will. And one thing is, every 4 years we get this advantage over other teams that they don't have, in that all the Bitcoiners will be interested. Well, some will, but I think when I first announced it, people didn't really get it. Some did. I think if the momentum keeps growing, people are like, oh, okay, I get this.
Do the Bitcoiners come to the games?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. So we have a meetup once a month. We usually get 50 to 100 there. And then I'd estimate at least 30 people have got on flights to come to games just for the game.
I'm still due.
You're going to come?
Next time I'm in the UK. Yeah.
Right, we're going to make that happen.
Yeah.
People listening will be like, stop fucking talking about football.
No. This is great.
I know. But it's a Bitcoin story.
Yeah. This is more interesting than my stuff, for sure.
Subjective.
Yeah.
Some people are like, it's funny. Some people hate the football stuff. They literally hate it. And they're like, this is a Bitcoin show. I don't want to listen to this shit. And also, ever since I started doing the football club, my Twitter engagement has dropped massively.
But that's just because the algorithm is very fickle, right?
But I've got 2 distinct crowds. It's like Bitcoin and football. And it's not like Bitcoin and macro or Bitcoin and, I don't know, cybersecurity.
I know.
They're like...
They're very distinct.
The Venn diagram doesn't cross very well.
Whenever I try and talk about music or cultural stuff, no engagement. They don't want to hear it.
No.
They want me to play the hits. I'm like Radiohead, and they want me to play Creep. And they hate playing Creep.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, but yeah. This is such an important project. And to do it first year, say what we're going to do and do it, get the trophies was great. Do it again and again and again relentlessly. It's a challenge. Funding is a challenge. We've got good sponsors, but we have to get more and continue. Anyone listening want to sponsor, let me know.
How much is it to get a logo on the sleeve?
That's gone.
That's taken.
Yeah,
What about this sleeve?
I'll tell you offline. Both sleeves are taken one by one. We do well on sponsorship. In terms of sponsorship, we do as well as a mid-table National League side. But if somebody heard that, they'd be like, well, that's bullshit. Why would a Step 5 team do as well as a Step 1 team? So I think you get more awareness with us. We're the only team that streams all their games.
Well, you guys are televised, yeah.
Yeah, we're televised, so we stream all our games, and we do all our interviews with the backdrops. I've got a big platform, and so you can go and pick a mid-table National League side, but the only people who are going to be aware of you are home fans who come to the ground and some away fans who come to the ground, whereas we've got this big platform. So we do very well. That's why I think getting from where we are up until the National League is fairly doable, because we have that.
Yeah.
But growing the other big challenge we've got to grow the crowd. You got to try and double it every year. We started with 40, and when we first took over those last few months, we had like 40, 50 a game. Last season it ranged, but we finished to average about 180, and we had one game of 327. But next year we need to be doing 350 a game average and a couple of big 500-600s, and it's hard finding that many people
in Bedford.
The people exist.
How many people are there in Bedford?
174,000. The people there.
Well, so what's going on?
It's getting in there. Well, what's going on? But we're not the biggest team in Bedford.
Oh, really?
So there's a team next door, Bedford Town, who have the long history. And when last season, We started in step 6 and they're in step 3. They're 3 divisions above us.
So you're the MK Dons to the Wimbledon here.
No, more like we're the Notts County to the Notts Forest. They thought we were a joke, dismissed us, laughed at us. We won the league last year and they came bottom of theirs. So we're now a division apart.
So, my gosh, wow, there's going to be some good derbies.
Well, so we can draw them in.
Derby.
Derbies.
Derby.
There's 3 competitions, I think 3 cup competitions we can draw them in. Definitely 2. If that happens, it will be crazy.
That'll be great.
If we get promoted and they don't, we'll have 2 confirmed league games. They will be sellouts. You will get 1,500 to 2,000 at them. People will get sent off. It will be fucking wild.
It'll be like the Old Firm.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
The Old Firm.
The Classico. The Bedford Classico.
We'll get the Bedford Ultras out. Connor and his mate.
Get the flares.
Yeah. But it's great for the town. I mean, look, I think the people at Bedford Town are a little bit sad. They see us as a threat, and I think they're a bit sad that we're a reality and we're a threat. But it's good for the town. I mean, the town has this attention on it now.
People will defect.
They will definitely defect.
Yeah.
I mean, we do things right, and I think people are seeing that. We're when's this coming out?
This will probably be out on about the 1st of June. 2nd.
Oh, so I can say this now. So there's a ladies team in Bedford Girls and Ladies, senior ladies team. They've got a reserve team, and then they've got 18 youth teams, girls aged 7 to 16, who twice a week turn up. 200 girls train and then play games on a Saturday or Sunday. It's a big unit of players. About a year ago, we approached them and said, look, we'll support you. We'll get you new kits for the ladies, for the seniors, and you can play at our ground. And then we paid expenses to the ladies. I think we're the only team who paid the ladies in our division. I can't confirm that. But it was a real support for them. And it was great. And then over this summer, we've agreed they're going to become Real Bedford ladies.
Wow.
So we're now going to have, across the senior and the kids, over 250 girls now playing in our jerseys with a Real Bedford logo, with the skull and crossbones. And so that you've suddenly got a base there of kids, mums and dads who play for Real Bedford, who may come to our games, who get behind what we're doing. You also, the whole town is like, oh my God, they're supporting the ladies' side of football, which is great. And so that gives us a real density around what we're doing. We have a similar partnership with a youth setup called Bedford Park Rangers. We hope at some point they do the same, and we support them. So we give them money for their coaches to do their development. We also have a hardship fund because there are kids who can't play football because their mum and dad just don't have the money. And so they can use the hardship fund to get boots or pay their subs. And so the end goal is to end up having these, probably you're talking about 600-700 kids playing under the Real Bedford brand. And that is what builds your crowd, and that's what makes you sustainable. But that also, it's becoming a Real Bedford show. But this presents the next challenge. So I need to build a new ground. I need 4 training pitches. I need a gym, a rehab centre. What's the other thing I need? But anyway, just say I need those. Oh, an academy. Well, an academy is part of that. But if I build all that, we have the home ground. The pitches themselves generate a couple £100,000 a year each because they get rented out, these 3G pitches. You can build an academy where you can take kids who, rather than go to university or sixth form, they come here and they get taught in this place part of the week. With the academy, how much time is education? How much time is playing football?
3 times a week you train. The rest during the day you learn about sports science, so you can take it into real world if you don't make it.
Okay, I don't know if that would have picked up, but basically Connor was saying it's 3 days a week you train and then you're doing your regular school stuff. But these kids are therefore training all day, every day, doing what they like. You get paid for running an academy. And then if you have the gym, that makes money. So, but that's a £10 million project. I think it pays back, not well, but I think it pays back over 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, it'll pay for itself, but I've got to find that money and do that. Where do I get, by the way, where do I get 10 million, Nick?
Bitcoiners, Twitter.
Yeah.
LPs.
How do I get someone to invest in that? Do we know anyone rich who will lend me 10 million?
You have to create a pitch deck and then send it to me.
We'll get on it. But what I hope for this is, I think this is a really great Bitcoin story in that we've created this football center where hundreds of kids go and play football and they're keeping fit, they're getting outside, we're supporting deprived families, we're supporting talented players, and a whole town's because this will become the most important thing in the town when it happens. The whole town can become focused on this, and there's a Bitcoin logo on there.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's cool. It's not us. I'm not arguing about ordinals. We're not arguing about whatever bullshit people are arguing about. Here is a community project that a bunch of Bitcoiners made happen, and look what it's done. And I
like it. It's very unique. Although we are going to argue about ordinals today. I think.
will.
Yeah.
But just my last closing thought is, anyone listening thinking, why are you talking about football? The same people who might not be into football probably heard about the Bitcoin Commons in Austin and Bitcoin Park in Nashville and these meet spaces that are growing up, Pubkey in New York, and people are starting their own ones. I think the idea really is like, you can go start a basketball team or a minor baseball team or a local rugby team. Guys come to me, want to set up a rugby league team in Bedford, or you can sponsor a snowboarder, or it can be a gymnast who wants. I think I did. I just gave some money to a young girl who's a swimmer. She wants to go to the Youth Olympics in Brazil. She can't afford it. It was like whatever the amount was. It was 3K. I think she was 1K short of funding. We supported her. We can support all these people. I think the lesson here is we've all financially benefited from a currency which is not inflationary. So we've all bought some and it's become worth more, and we can share that out and help other people do things. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's what Balaji calls a network state. You start in the digital world and then you go analog.
Yeah.
You build an analog presence.
Yeah. Anyway, should we talk about Ordinals? Unless you've got any other questions about the football team. And
No. It's fascinating.
You can write me a 10-minute
I didn't know
chat.
any of that stuff. Yeah.
I will get the pitch there. Actually, to be honest, it's half done. Yeah,
I'll give you some feedback.
Yeah. You got any billionaire friends?
Yes.
Which, by the way, just my last pitch for this, if anyone is a billionaire who's listening, if you're a billionaire, you can go and buy Chelsea, who are like 4th in the league, and screw it up and end up 12th in the league. Or you could even buy a championship team. But the most you're going to do with a championship team is hopefully get in the Premier League. And if you do, you're never going to win it. So you can basically get up a league and finish mid-table. If you buy Chelsea, all right, you can win things, but you've got to spend a lot of money. You could buy half buy a team in the 9th tier of English football. You've got 8 promotions to enjoy. And once you're involved, you won't give a fuck that we're not a Premier League team. You'll be on for the ride. So give me a call.
I'm a Chelsea fan, so I object to that
I'm
statement.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry.
It's been rough.
Yeah. I mean, but your chairman is, I think, naively thought, as I did when I first bought Bedford, because I did the small version of that, that you can buy success.
Well, we did historically buy success with Roman.
Yes, but you historically bought
Bless him.
success in a staged and controlled way. He just went out and was literally like spraying money everywhere, buying everyone. I mean, how many players are on the books now, and just threw them all together. I actually felt bad for Potter because I think he's a good manager.
Difficult situation.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk Ordinals. We should do Real Bedford Ordinals.
You've got one. Rob Hamilton.
Oh yeah. Where is it?
I'll tell you another time.
Have you got it?
No, I've not got it.
Tell me now.
Jeremy's got it.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, Ordinals. I don't care about Ordinals.
Really?
I mean,
You should.
No, I don't care. I don't care as in I don't care if people do it, and I don't care if people hate it. I've got a very simple view. Block space is there to be bought or sold, and if you're not breaking consensus, you have done nothing wrong. If you've got an issue with the Ordinals, you're not going to stop it by shouting at people. It's a bit like, I can't think of a good analogy, but if you don't like it, propose a bit and see if it gets through. I don't think it will, so accept this new reality.
Well, that's a very common sense view. I wish more people had that view.
But I'm not too keen on the whole trolling people with it. I think it's a really interesting point where it says, I'm like Bitcoin, so I'm trying to break it. And this, how it's exposed problems with Lightning, I think is super important. I think we've benefited from it. Better to find out now than later down the line. I think dressing up as a wizard and dancing on stage, it feels very Ethereum.
And to be clear, their dances, they just didn't execute the dance to it very well.
We weren't even in time.
They weren't in time. Udi didn't know the flossing dance.
I can't do it. I've tried.
I can't do it either, but I didn't attempt it on stage.
Can you do it?
I've never tried it. I'm very proud to say I've never tried
It's
it.
surprising. Well, I've got
It's
a
actually
daughter.
pretty hard.
Yeah.
They picked a hard dance. They should have picked an easier one.
Look, he's doing it.
See,
Let's do it.
that's actually really good.
We haven't got a camera on him. Con, you need to come to the camera and do it. So, yes, I don't mind. I don't think Giacomo shouting at Udi online and calling him a scammer is going to make any difference. If anything, it's going to egg him on. He's going to enjoy
Well,
it.
that's what he wants.
Yeah, totally.
That's what he wants.
So I accept this new reality. I haven't bought them. I don't have any need for them. I think ultimately people will lose money, but
It does affect you as a Bitcoiner, though, because it changes the nature of Bitcoin. So
Yeah.
it creates a new regime for fees,
Yep.
for better or for worse. I'm on the side of fees being good.
yeah.
So structurally new regime, it congests block space, and now it costs more. For a long time, Bitcoin was 1 sat per byte. In my opinion, that's too low, right? So it's good for the long-term security, in my opinion. It creates a new pressure to take transactions off the main chain and use L2s, whether it's Lightning or something else. And it injects new developers into Bitcoin and new startups. So it adds vibrancy to the ecosystem. So even if you don't care about JPEGs one way or the other, it actually does change the nature of Bitcoin.
It does. And so the reality is, if you really don't like it, you have to propose a bit and have to get it changed.
It's
And
very
not-
difficult.
Yeah.
So Andrew Poelstra, who's not on Twitter, he was one of the architects of Taproot. He had, I don't know where he actually made this point, some non-Twitter domain, I don't know where. He said, there's no easy way to bar the insertion of arbitrary data into Bitcoin. And if you do it, if you reverse Taproot and you make it harder to inject data into Bitcoin, people have the bug for it now. They want to do it,
Yeah.
right? They'll find a way to do it. It'll be less efficient. Maybe you can insert data in public keys, for instance, like kind of garbled public keys. Historically, people inserted data in op return, right? So there's no easy way to just selectively eliminate inscriptions from Bitcoin. People will find another way to do it. So there'll always be this congestion issue kind of like from now on.
Right. And you probably understand this better than me, but my expectation is, there's been a long debate over the fee market. And as the block reward drops, will there be enough to provide enough security? And I know there's how much is enough security, but
Right.
bear with me. And one of the things that people have theorized is that, look, a couple of decades down the line, so many people would be using Bitcoin. It will be the settlement layer. It will be expensive to use. Let's not worry about it. So if that does happen, and if fees are very high for settling on Bitcoin, it would be very, very expensive to put ordinals within the block. So eventually, ordinals might get priced out of layer one anyway.
That's correct. So high prices are the cure for high prices, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about other commodities, oil. If oil gets really expensive, new oil wells come online, and that creates new supply, and that that brings back down the price of oil. Bitcoin's not exactly like that, but if Bitcoin block space gets very expensive, people that are inserting JPEGs, which is a very inefficient way to insert image data into Bitcoin, they'll find ways to compress the data, right? So there's ways to do it with code. So instead of putting pixel data into Bitcoin, you could compress an image into a few lines of code, right? So that's the idea of like a generative NFT. So where we are now is in a transition phase where people are still really inefficiently bundling as much image data into Bitcoin as possible. Once fees rise, people will want to increase the semantic density of block space and just be far more efficient in terms of how they're embedding data into the blockchain. So it's not something I worry about at all. And it's the same with monetary transactions. If fees rise, maybe it doesn't make sense to do a $5 transaction in Bitcoin, but then you will use a deferred settlement mechanism like Lightning, where, of course, many transactions are associated with one on-chain settlement. So I don't worry about fees at all.
No.
And I have seen a lot of discourse like, oh, fees are too high. Too high is a normative. You're imposing a normative lens on what is a market system. If you believe that Bitcoin should be an open and permissionless system, there's no such thing as too high. You could say it's too high for the global south, but that's just unfortunately the nature of the system, right? We can't impose a mandate. We can't impose a designated pricing on the commodity. It's like saying the price of oil is too high, and the working class, they can't afford their rides to work or whatever. That's unfortunate if the price of oil goes too high, but there's nobody that can set the price. And it's the same with Bitcoin block space. Nobody can set the price. We just have to accept the market price and tune our usage of the protocol accordingly. So if it is too high, then we use Lightning. We use other L2s.
And I don't think this is like the block size wars. Some people have compared it to like another civil war, but the block size wars was very different in that we were heading towards a chain split. This is like a very serious question about, was this the right thing for Bitcoin? And there were two very distinct camps. Whereas there is no outcome here where something's split in. It is just a use case. So I've been comparing it almost to it's like a Bitcoin culture war we're going through now.
Totally.
And I'm okay with the fact that it, like if we class it as that, but with it being a Bitcoin culture war, it's almost those fighting aren't changing anything by fighting. And some of it's a net negative.
Yeah.
There's no winners. I don't think there's any winners in culture wars. We can see that right now, the culture war we're in.
Well, it was a necessary conflict that was going to happen. I think it has actually been going on for much longer than people think.
Of course.
So there have been debates around whether it's okay to insert arbitrary data in Bitcoin, sort of non-economic data from the beginning, right? So back in the day, there was this protocol called Counterparty, which was mediating asset issuance. And back then, there's always been this view among a certain faction of Bitcoiners, well, it's risky to have things that aren't Bitcoin being circulated on Bitcoin. Bitcoin should be trading just units of Bitcoin. And Counterparty was proposing an asset transmission protocol. And there was a way to do a multisig for Counterparty. And it was rendered non-standard, actually. So there's probably some controversy around this, but I believe it was actually Luke Dash that rendered multi-sig transactions for counterparty assets non-standard. That doesn't mean they're barred by the protocol. It just means that if you send the transaction into the network, it won't propagate. So you'd have to go to a miner directly to mine it.
Right.
And so that was back in 2013, I believe. And that actually did help kill off counterparty usage on Bitcoin.
They can't do the same now.
So, I think it'd be difficult for any developer to get a change like that through today. So, but that's just an example showing there has been this conflict between developers and users historically over whether it's acceptable to transmit non-Bitcoin related data on Bitcoin. And this is just a continuation of that. And in fact, Luke Dash has been vocal on the Ordinals debate this time. Again, he's actually been fairly consistent on that. So for as long as Bitcoin has existed, practically there's been a debate over how much data should be an op return. Should it be 40 bytes or 80 bytes? Is it too much to have 80 bytes in op return? This is just the same debate, but on a much bigger scale, because now potentially we have blocks that are all arbitrary data, and that's perceived as excluding sort of regular transactions.
So it causes another change as well. And that when people say to me, like, what is Bitcoin? I'm always quite simple about it. Bitcoin's just money. But the protocol actually now is more than just money. It's a market for data. It's a protocol for data.
Yeah,
I don't want to explain this to people. It is that, but essentially it is.
The thing is that we can't control what people do with it.
Yeah.
You know, so Satoshi put some non-financial information in the first block, right? Early users of Bitcoin put, like, if you remember, there's an ASCII Bernanke. I think that was inserted in 2011 into Bitcoin. I think that was through arbitrary data insertion in addresses, and people have been using op return to put data into Bitcoin for the whole history of Bitcoin. So as an open protocol without rules on like who can use it or for what, and as a database that's highly available and has very strong assurances that that data is always going to be there, of course people are going to use it for non-money type transactions. That's just the nature of the system.
But a lot more so now. There's
certainly now more, but we're still operating within the protocol rules. We're still bound by this 4 megabyte limit. I mean, obviously the rule changed in 2017 with SegWit, but we're still bound by that limit. So we are still operating within the sort of like actual protocol rule set. It's just that there's a new economic motive to put arbitrary data into Bitcoin. So it has changed in magnitude.
I do think there is a potential future block size argument if these ordinals continue to be used and successful. But as we said earlier, more people using Bitcoin for the transfer of money and settlement, then it becomes expensive. People who are big proponents of ordinals being priced out might be like, well, I think we maybe want to look at a block size increase to make this more affordable. I think that potential argument comes again down the line.
I think the ordinals people would be smart to understand that we need to start compressing the data. There is one valid point, which I would say is that ordinals or inscriptions are kind of subsidized in a way by the protocol because the witness, you pay less in fees, right, than the transaction data. And this is in the witness part of the block. So that
I think you should explain that whole thing.
I believe this change came into effect around the time of segregated witness in 2017. And if I'm not getting it wrong, the idea was to encourage people to make SegWit transactions and to make it cheaper from a fee perspective to have this witness data. And so because inscriptions are going in the witness, it's kind of cheaper in Bitcoin terms to insert that data. You could say maybe that was a mistake back then because now it's somewhat cheaper to put arbitrary data into Bitcoin than it is to put transaction data into Bitcoin. So that's probably the one sort of like valid point that I would say the anti-inscriptions people have.
So the people anti-inscriptions, are they, like I say, I'm on that I don't care, but actually I think there's more arguments to make me care that I've heard than I don't care. My fear stuff is more about, I've spent all this time, last 6 years, talking to people about Bitcoin as money, it's the best form of money. And then there's this curveball that's come in. So I have to deal with that. And I kind of just want to focus on the money bit. But at the same time, like you said, you've just done now, you've given me a very good argument for why ordinals are good. And,
well, I think it makes Bitcoin better at being money, right?
Yes.
So it increases long-term fee revenue, which increases the long-term security of the protocol, which we totally need. I don't know what the correct amount of security spend is. Maybe there's no correct amount, but I think it's ought to be higher if the system is mediating a lot of value transfer. We need miners to be incentivized to do their job. So kind of on a second order basis, I think inscriptions make Bitcoin more secure from a monetary perspective. And they also create this pressure to do layered scaling, right? Because if fees get really expensive, your motive is to increase the economic density of transactions. So Lightning does that, right? But people need a reason to create an L2, like a roll up on Bitcoin or to use Lightning. The reason now is fees. So I don't really worry about it because all Ordinals does is create this motive for developers to increase the efficiency of the Bitcoin system in terms of the value to the bytes ratio. And we should always be increasing that ratio. I believed in that a long time. And there, in the last 2 years or so, there hasn't been a good reason to try and be efficient with your transactions because the block space was cheap. Now it's expensive. There's a good reason it'd be like that. And I think all Bitcoiners today believe in layered scaling, right? So ordinals being a thing increases fees, increases the need for layered scaling. So I do think it makes Bitcoin better at being money. It does dilute the narrative a little bit, for sure. So I think that's a valid complaint that people have, like Bitcoin should just be about financial transactions, but the benefits seem really material to me.
It's diluted the some of the core ideology as well, because there is certainly a split amongst people who consider themselves Bitcoin maximalists. We were out in, I can't remember that bar, the PubKey event the other night, and that's a Bitcoin crowd. That is, a Bitcoin crowd was probably, I would guess, 95 to 99%, maybe even 100% would have been small blockers, would you say?
Yeah.
But I think it's a much wider split of those who are pro-ordinals and those who are against it. I'd be guessing 50.
I would take the other side of it. I think the vast majority of people I speak to just are pretty on the fence that they don't really care.
Well, they don't care, but the pros and the against, they're like, I've seen a fairly even split, but it's diluted that ideology. And sometimes I'm like, that's a good thing because we don't want ideologues here. But at the same time, I don't know when there comes a time when we do need the ideologues, where we've got the people who are firmly. Yeah, I always think of John Carvalho during the block size wars. I thought he did a very good job at defending on the Bitcoin mailing list, with others just like letting this pass. I don't know if there comes a time when we need it, but it's certainly split the crowd, and perhaps this is just going to keep happening. So there is no core thesis, and perhaps that's the best thing for this.
Well, I think one obvious thing, it brings more people into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And it brings a different breed of person, and I'm always on the side of universalizing and as big tent as possible. So I think it makes Bitcoin more palatable, actually, to newcomers to see that there's heterogeneity in the community ideologically. The other interesting thing is it actually might help ossify Bitcoin in some sense, because the developers now realize there's unintended consequences of the changes they insert into Bitcoin. No Bitcoin core developer really realized that SegWit plus Taproot would equal inscriptions. So I think there's actually going to be some hesitancy in the core dev community to do another change, for better or for worse. And that means that Bitcoin is more likely to be ossified. And so I don't know if we actually need sort of the same foot soldiers that we had in the scaling wars, because I don't see any imminent changes on the horizon. In fact, I think it's actually quite possible that Taproot is maybe the last major change we get in Bitcoin, precisely because of the Ordinals and Inscription things. It makes the devs realize, wow, we tweaked this one small thing, had this huge, colossal effect, so let's not change anything ever again.
So from my understanding, the only big change that people have been discussing and want is the covenants that's been discussed. I mean, I don't know how important it is, but that's the only one that I've heard, and that might be 5-10 years down the line.
The other one that I think I would personally want to see in Bitcoin would be a opcode allowing for the verification of zero knowledge proofs, so that we could create ZK rollups on Bitcoin, which would be an alternative L2, which has seen a lot of success on Ethereum, and I think is a very valid way to compress transactional data, have lots of off or near chain transactions, and a very small amount of data on the blockchain. So it'd be a big efficiency win.
So let's compare that to Lightning, because one of the things that has been exposed with this is that high fees have kind of exposed some bugs and issues with the Lightning. One thing we've been trying to get our head around is people say, well, the solution to high fees is the Lightning Network. But I still can't get my head around the idea of somebody who has money on the Lightning Network, but they don't own a channel on the base chain. And so in doing so, are they always trusting someone else's channel? And then are they really sovereign?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very fair point. If the settlement fee becomes very high, then the ability to move in and out of channels or to settle channels to the base chain becomes more difficult. It becomes more costly. So Lightning's not immune to high fees by any means. The security model of Lightning supposes that you can always settle on the main chain. So I don't know if it's a flaw in Lightning. That's just the nature of the system.
Yeah. So explain how ZK rollups work.
Oh,
the short version.
Wish you didn't ask me that.
By the name, I'm guessing a bunch of stuff gets rolled up and checked and then gets signed. That's fine. It's a way of trusting a bunch of data.
Yeah. So, man, that's probably literally the one question that I would hate to be asked on a podcast. So, as far as I understand, you have a bunch of transactions that are proposed, they're batched together, and then there's an entity, a sequencer, which creates a digest of those transactions and registers it periodically to the blockchain. And the ZK element is a way of proving that they've been honest in terms of summarizing this transaction data and inserting the state and creating a faithful representation that gets registered to the Bitcoin state. There's another kind of rollup, which is an optimistic rollup, which relies more on fraud proofs. So the ability to challenge a sequencer as to the validity of the data that they're registering to the base layer. I'm not as much a fan of those ones. I'd say ZK rollups have found product market fit on Ethereum. They seem to work. The security model seems to work. So I think it's a totally valid approach for Bitcoin to take, but it does require a soft fork. So,
do we know how much capacity they can add to it?
I would say almost an arbitrary amount, a really significant amount of capacity.
Okay, interesting. We should try and cover that at some point.
Yeah, John Light has been really good on them.
Okay,
he wrote a whole paper on it. So
okay.
Yeah, there's a few people trying to do it right now, actually, on Bitcoin.
Do you know anything about this ARC thing that I've seen popping up on Twitter recently? I've not looked at it at all.
I haven't spent a lot of time on it. Yeah.
What about Fedi?
I mean, have you done a show with
We've
Obi?
made 2 with Obi, and then we did a show with Callie on eCash.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of having multiple competing scaling approaches is absolutely correct. Whether it's federated Chaumian banks, whether it's a roll-up, whether it's Lightning. I think if there was a mistake Bitcoiners made, it was to hitch their horse just to Lightning 5 years ago. Lightning, to me, is suitable for a certain genre of transaction, basically a high-frequency, small granularity, fast-settling, kind of continuous stream of small payments. That's kind of only a very narrow set of transactions that satisfy those criteria. So I kind of lament that there haven't been more attempts at scaling. And it's because Lightning is very good, right? If you remember Ethereum, 5 years ago, they had a similar thing to Lightning. I think it was called Raiden. It didn't work. And then they went ahead and proposed dozens of different other scaling methodologies. I kind of wish that that had been the case on Bitcoin too. But the good news is that we now have a very good reason to pursue new scaling mechanisms. So we're kind of having that renaissance now on Bitcoin.
Yeah, we're noticing there's a bit of momentum behind other L2 options. So.
Yeah, I mean, and Lightning has reached some maturity from the protocol perspective, but it still hasn't become totally widespread, which I think is signaling to people, okay, well, let's explore other mechanisms too.
Okay. Well, we actually wanted to talk to you about Operation Chokepoint, and we got some time. We can cover a bit of that. So you might correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're the first person I remember talking about this in Bitcoin. I don't know if somebody raised it to you first or you saw some discussion, but are you taking credit for it?
I probably coined the term Chokepoint 2.0.
Yeah.
I'm probably not the first person that had ever pointed out that Bitcoin companies have a hard time getting banked. I think everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But there was a really specific set of events that happened around the turn of this year that turned it from a low-level continuous thing to a kind of acute crisis.
And do you believe this is a concerted, coordinated campaign to choke crypto out for more sinister reasons, or do you think you can point at things like FTX and say, I think if you're a policymaker, you don't really understand Bitcoin and crypto, and you think your job is to protect people. You see things such as FTX, and maybe add GBTC in there, or BlockFi, or any number of faders, and go, well, this is all fucking crazy, and this is terrible for consumers, and yes, we should protect them.
Yeah, you don't need a sinister explanation. That's the explanation. So in the US, we know it's coordinated. We absolutely know that. It's certain officials in the Biden administration that are working together with specific regulators, in particular the bank regulators, to marginalize the Bitcoin and crypto industry. In the US, I'll limit my comments to the US for now, as a reaction to FTX in particular, and also because of the midterms, because Congress became split between the Democrats and the Republicans, and the regulators, the executive branch, realized Congress is not going to do anything about crypto because the Republicans are more favorable towards it. They won't pass any anti-crypto legislation. So the executive branch realized, okay, we got to take it upon ourselves and do something about this. And their preferred means of doing that, it's a high leverage tactic, is to deputize the banks, to get the banks to do their dirty business for them. And they basically signal to them very clearly, don't deal with crypto companies. Don't bank them.
But do you think this is a consumer protection policy, or do you think it's oh, now we've got the opportunity to do what we've always wanted to do, is get rid of this because of the likes of FTX.
There's an overt hostility in the Biden admin towards the Bitcoin and crypto space just latently. They got the political go-ahead to do it post-FTX because FTX really did actually change sentiment towards the crypto industry in this country. Absolutely. So it gave them political license to do that. But I think it was opportunistic. It was, crypto's out of control and we need to do something about it. The other thing is there was a view that the crypto space could actually destabilize the established financial system. And so they wanted to insulate the traditional banks from the volatility of the crypto industry. We know that that's not the cause of the banking crisis.
Yeah.
The cause of the banking crisis is interest rates being raised very quickly and depositors becoming very concerned about the banks and withdrawing their funds really quickly. So those two things are the main causes. Crypto, Bitcoin, the industry going up and down, that's not really the cause. Although it's unfortunate for us that the first three banks that collapsed, they all had some portion of their business was crypto related. So initially there was an attempt to blame it on the crypto space. However, as more banks started to fall and collapse that were just regular banks, they stopped being able to do that.
Yeah. Can we just do a quick TLDR on each one? Silvergate, I was a big fan of theirs. I've really liked Alan Lane. Met him a few times. Think he's a good guy. It feels like they at least tried to wind down the business professionally and ensure everyone was protected. But they also, at the same time, they very quickly went from a position of appearing to be a very strong bank, traditional bank, that had decided to take the move and support crypto and Bitcoin companies, but very quickly found themselves unwinding. What was the background to this? So
Silvergate, they're actually choosing to voluntarily liquidate, which is something that people miss. That's very rare for a bank. So they're actually winding down all their operations. All of their depositors are made whole without the federal government having to step in, right? So they're not like the other banks where they collapsed and there was a loss that the government had to insure. Silvergate chose to wind down. Now the question is, why would they do that? Well, on the one hand, they did service almost exclusively the crypto and the Bitcoin space. And so as 2022 went on, their depository base drew down because a lot of their clients were kind of going bankrupt or something like that, right? They also did service FTX Alameda, and so there were investigations launched into them. Some senators questioned their solvency. In fact, Elizabeth Warren and some of her colleagues, they overtly questioned the solvency of Silvergate, which of course, if powerful senators are questioning your integrity, you as a depositor, you're going to leave, right? So that helped fragilize the bank. The other thing that happened was the FDIC, the Depository Insurance Corporation, they started to totally ratchet up the scrutiny against Silvergate, basically saying, send us lists of your clients, send us all this data, like tons of bureaucratic tasks, which made their life a lot more difficult. And the Federal Reserve went to Silvergate and said, you need to eliminate your concentration risk. So you can't have more than, let's say, 15% of your deposits pertain to the crypto industry. Now, Silvergate was pretty much a crypto-facing bank, right? They serve crypto companies. So this 15% threshold means it's another way of saying you can't run your business anymore. So the combination of higher compliance costs to serve the crypto space plus this kind of artificial 15% threshold meant that their business model didn't work anymore. So certainly they suffered a bit of a run on deposits, but what actually happened was they realized they didn't have a business anymore because the government basically told them, you can't run your operation the way you used to. You can't be a boutique crypto-facing bank. So that's actually the reason they chose to liquidate in the end.
It reminds me of that conversation we had a couple of days ago with Peter St. Ange, where I was just, I'm becoming very sympathetic to libertarians, even, whatever my opinions are politically, but very sympathetic in that the amount of work the government does to make it hard to run a business and the amount of money they take from us through various taxation that stops us reinvesting. It's become really clear to me recently. The reason being is, I had a little bit of extra cash recently because of the podcast, and I was able to buy another business and invest and grow. And I think about how much money I would have if I didn't pay such high tax, and the amount of other businesses I could start or invest in and do things. And I know I'm a better investor and a better operator than any bureaucrat in government.
Right.
And so I've become very sympathetic recently. And that's just the same point. That is a successful business that employs hundreds of people, services lots of other companies.
They provided an essential service.
Service.
They were one of the few banks that was explicitly, avowedly pro-crypto and allowed these crypto firms to do business in the United States.
But here comes the government with new regulations, which makes it hard for them to do business, which means a bunch of people have lost their jobs and a bunch of other companies are struggling to find banking services. So they are just squeezing good businesses for no apparent reason.
Well, and to be clear, they're not doing this through the sort of accepted democratic process, right? So what Congress could do would be to pass a law to say, well, under constitutional grounds, banks can't service the crypto industry. If they really wanted to do that, that would be the way to do it. What they shouldn't do, or they shouldn't be allowed to do, is to have bank regulators go to the banks and say, you can't do business with this legal industry. That's unconstitutional, right? That's a due process violation, right? That happened with Chokepoint 1.0, and it just was unconstitutional. It ended when Trump came into office, but they would have also lost the legal case. They tried it against other types of businesses, weed businesses, adult entertainment businesses, payday lenders, gun manufacturers. So these are politically disfavored businesses that the government sought to choke off through the banks. This time, the target was crypto. It's still unconstitutional, right? Federal regulators can't just persuade banks to not do business with the legal industry. That's not the way it works in this country. So that's kind of my real objection is it's not just that the crypto space has been victimized, it's that they're doing it in an unacceptable way that's not part of the social contract in America.
So how is it different with Signature and Silicon Valley?
So Signature is maybe even a more sinister case because they were actually sent into receivership by the New York Department of Financial Services in mid-March after the collapse of Silvergate and Silicon Valley Bank. And so they were nationalized, basically, right? So all the creditors were wiped out, the shareholders were wiped out, right? Apparently, this is what their chairman, Barney Frank, said, they were solvent at the time that occurred, right? So they were not actually in such a beleaguered state that they couldn't do business on Monday. They probably could have, right? But regardless, they were nationalized. So that's basically government seizing a solvent banking institution. That's very, very unusual, deeply unusual. In fact, I don't think it's ever happened before. Typically, when banks are sent into receivership, that's because they've failed or they're in the process of failing. So that was a very odd thing to occur. What happened after that was their crypto business. So they had this thing called Signet, which allowed their clients to settle up fiat between themselves on a real-time basis. Silvergate had one as well called Sen. Sen was gone. Signet was the only one left. So I think that was why they had a target on them. And Signet was not sold, even though there were bidders for it, right? So in the sale process that the FDIC managed, the crypto deposits were not sold and Signet was not sold. The crypto depositors in Signature were told, withdraw your funds, leave, find another bank. So the government seizes this institution, they run a sale process, they sell the bank to another bank, but in that process, the crypto business is stripped out and destroyed. So that to me is intensely suspicious, right? Maybe it wasn't a anti-crypto animus that was the reason they were nationalized, but the consequence was Signature, another explicitly pro-crypto institution, was taken out behind the woodshed and shot, and their entire crypto business was eliminated. With SVB, another interesting tidbit, SVB was not really a crypto-facing institution. They had Circle as a client, but that was about it. During their sale process, the OCC said to the bidders, you can't sell, you can't transfer or acquire assets pertaining to three things with SVB, the three C's: no crypto, no Cayman, and no China.
Why Cayman?
I'm not sure, honestly, but they were basically the politically disfavored portions of their business. So you can't acquire any crypto depositors, you can't acquire any Cayman depositors, and no Chinese startups that had accounts with SVB can be sold. So in each case here, we see a sale process managed by the government, but we see the crypto element stripped off and not included in the sale.
And so the point of Chokepoint 2.0 is to choke out crypto and Bitcoin and as such, because the idea of just outright banning this would take too long.
It wouldn't be possible, right? You wouldn't be able to persuade Congress to ban crypto. It's not like China where one person can decide. Like, you have to persuade the representatives of the people to do it if you wanted to ban the industry. That would never happen. So the idea was to do it in this roundabout, sly way and use the executive branch's power over the banking space to really hamstring the industry. And it worked, frankly. Today, there are very few banks that will accept a crypto business's money.
What can be done about that? Is there anything that can be done? Can you separate the banking sector? Can you insulate it from government interference?
No, because banks are public-private partnerships. They exist at the behest of the government. They're highly regulated, and they are insured by the government. That's what FDIC is. It's depository insurance that comes from the government. So banks are always going to be beholden to what the government wants. However, if you're violating the Constitution, you can, of course, sue. So certain injured parties are definitely contemplating, and I believe will, bring a case against certain banking regulators protesting the fact that the banks were deputized against the crypto space. So that's one solution. Another solution is congressional oversight, right? So the executive branch went around Congress, even though authority should have been vested with Congress. So certain members of Congress are now pushing back, subpoenas, potentially trying to figure out, hey, hang on, why did the Biden administration go around us and exercise undue authority that they maybe don't even legally have? That's another solution. However, what's actually happening, the way people are dealing with it is entrepreneurs are going offshore. They're starting businesses in the UK, in EU, which has comprehensive crypto legislation, in MiCA. They're going to Hong Kong, right? They're going to China. So we have businesses that would exist here that are going elsewhere. They're going to Bermuda, Switzerland, Singapore, and Hong Kong in particular, right? So people are just leaving. So the American crypto industry has suffered this huge loss because the government did this.
How do you think this plays out? Because we do have an election in 2 years. Maybe I'm wrong, but I have a feeling the Republicans might win. It feels like we have a little bit more favor with some Republicans, not all. Do you think, whether it's DeSantis or whether it's Trump, do you think we're in a more favored position, protected if that happens, or do you think they'll do the same?
Yeah, I mean, DeSantis is, I think, explicitly pro-crypto. So that would obviously be better.
Anti-CBDC.
Certainly, yeah. Trump, I honestly don't know, but under Trump, Chokepoint 1.0 was ended. So I would presume that he wouldn't inherit 2.0 and think it's a good thing. So certainly a lot turns on the outcome of that election. And a lot of people are looking forward to it and thinking, well, if Biden wins the second term, it's actually curtains for the domestic crypto industry. So the other thing that could happen is there could be a successful lawsuit brought by the industry to restrain the banking regulators from doing this. The problem is, normally what would happen is, okay, there's an industry that really needs banking. Why don't entrepreneurs create new banks to serve this industry that's underserved? Well, they tried. That's what Caitlin Long's Custodia was.
They won't allow her to do it.
That was what the OCC chartered banks, crypto banks, were trying to do. Anchorage, Protego, Paxos, right? Those banks were run out of town. The OCC denied all of their applications. So the normal market process of creating new banking institutions to serve this underserved industry wasn't allowed to occur because banking charters are being denied. I do see the states potentially getting involved here because the states do have the right to charter banks. That's been one of their key rights historically. The government's trampling on top of that. So it could be the case that there is pushback from the states saying, hey, actually, we do reserve the right to charter these new institutions. So you should let us do it.
So hopefully Cynthia Lummis will do something in Wyoming and something will happen in Texas. And
yeah, I hope we see more defense of things like the SPDI in Wyoming. Wyoming tried to join Custodia's lawsuit against the Fed. I think they actually weren't able to. But I wouldn't be surprised if more states push back and try and seize some authority and try and charter new crypto-focused banking institutions.
It's so utterly frustrating to watch this being played out and this choke against something that we may disagree whether it's Bitcoin or crypto, but at the same time, this kind of choke out of these free market ideas.
Well, I mean, you had a great episode with Luke Roman recently where I think he described it like closing the theater doors before setting it on fire. And I think he's right. So I believe this is an attempt to impose soft capital controls on the American people, because what they don't want is capital fleeing the system to an alternative. They want capital to stay in government bonds, where the government has to run inflation really hot and keep yields relatively low so that they can reset their debt position, which is very high, right? So they kind of want people to stay in the formal regulated banking system because the banks hold a lot of these government bonds, right? That's what they want. They don't want people fleeing for the exits. And so to me, this does look like an attempt to impose capital controls, which the US hasn't had since World War II, right? Since Bretton Woods. But I think that's kind of where we're going now.
It's kind of an admission that they're fucked.
I don't think they can succeed in that because we live in this digital world. The rails to move between fiat and Bitcoin, they exist still, right? They weren't successful in killing off the crypto industry. All they've been able to do is delay the transition, but it's still going to happen.
Yeah, and if they go after exchanges...
They have been, right?
Well,
see, they've been harassing Kraken, they're harassing Coinbase, so they're using all the tools in their toolkit. But still, we live in a democracy. We have property rights in this country. The government can't really just kill off legal corporations that they don't like. So ultimately, we are still protected. These institutions still exist. So they can't have a complete victory here. And that's why they're going to lose in the long run.
Is there anything we can do or people listening can do?
You can talk to your elected representative, honestly. Mm-hmm. So by making a lot of noise around Chokepoint 2.0, a lot of things happened. Bobby Kennedy talked about it. In fact, so, I mean, I love it. He shouted me out, right? So that's incredible. Certain members of the House
Can we take a moment there just to recognize JFK's nephew is shouting you out?
I know. It's a surreal
How
moment.
surreal does the world get sometimes?
I didn't expect any of this would happen. Frankly, I didn't actually know who he was before that happened, but I thought his speech at the conference was incredible.
Yeah.
He won a lot of support in doing that. Members of Congress held hearings trying to dig into the Chokepoint stuff. The problem is we need discovery in a legal case to actually get the documents so that we can find out what the FDIC was doing, what they were thinking, what the Biden admin was thinking. So we do need a legal process to play out there. So there are potential reprisals that may occur. It's going to take time. And certain banks may come in and choose to serve the crypto industry too. So that might be another way this happens. But yeah, I mean, we've been under the cosh here for the first half of this year. I do see some light at the end of the tunnel, but it's been immensely challenging.
But it's just the latest fight.
Yeah, and they're going to keep fighting us. I mean, that's just going to be the status quo from now on.
All right. Listen, I know you've got to head off shortly. Is there anything we've not talked about that you wanted to talk about today?
I mean, that's the most important thing, honestly. I think we should continue to make noise about it. I don't think we should accept this lying down. I think the Biden admin has overreached, frankly. I think it's a few activists in that. I don't think Biden himself cares about crypto one way or the other.
I think Elizabeth Warren does.
She certainly does. And she has kind of a shadow cabinet, people that she got into power. Like the key architect of Chokepoint, in my view, is Bharat Ramamurthy, who works for Biden in the White House, who is a protege of Warren's. So she kind of inserted some of her people in these key positions.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot we can do, actually. In particular, there's legal processes that we can employ. And if you've been harmed by this stuff, I think you should basically sign on to one of these lawsuits because they will be brought to bear soon.
So there's actual lawsuits, active lawsuits, or potential active lawsuits?
They're being crafted. Lobbying and policy organizations like Blockchain Association, Chamber of Digital Commerce, Coin Center, they're contemplating this. But what they need is good plaintiffs. So they need firms that have been harmed because they illegally lost banking access, right? So they need the right kind of plaintiffs to come forward to join these cases so that we can get discovery and we can find out behind the scenes, we can get the emails, we can find out what these bureaucrats were thinking and saying. Because I know that if we get in there, that is going to throw a lot of sunlight on the system. And I think, frankly, it was a violation of the Constitution, and I think we'll win the lawsuits.
Signature is a good plaintiff?
Yeah, you would expect them because they've obviously been harmed. So yeah, I think I haven't heard anything from them. I think the banks are a little bit shy right now because they're going through their own processes of liquidation and there's other investigations to the banks. So the banks themselves certainly have been harmed, but they may not be the plaintiffs with the most standing here.
All right. Well, listen, we'll keep an eye on that. Nic, always good to see you. 15th appearance, or was it 14th?
14th appearance.
I thought you'd done 14.
No, this was the 14th.
This is 14.
14th appearance. I'm sure we'll see you soon. We'll do the next one in the Bedford.
Okay.
We'll get you
I'll
over.
come and see you.
All right, man. Take care.
Thank you.